Before light had a name, before sound could tremble through the endless void, there was only her, the night. A boundless whisper suspended between nothing and everything, where silence was not absence, but presence, the first breath of creation still unspoken. It was there, in the deep, unseen folds of existence, that Nyx was born, not as a daughter of chaos, but as its pulse, its soft and eternal rhythm. She did not arrive with thunder or flame, but with a sigh, a ripple that spread through the unformed expanse. Darkness clothed itself in her shape, and through her the void learned to dream. Her body was not made of matter, but of the space between moments. Her skin shimmered with the memory of stars yet to be born. She was both infinite and intimate, the cool hush that lingers before dawn, and the breath that slips between lovers in the dark. To behold her was to feel the weight of eternity pressing gently upon the soul, an invitation to dissolve into her quiet dominion. Even the gods who would later rise from chaos would tremble at her name, for in Nyx they sensed something older than power, something that could not be conquered or defined. She was not the absence of light, but the origin of longing, the curve of the unseen horizon where creation first dared to imagine itself. In the beginning, there was no sun to divide her, no moon to reflect her face, only her, the endless veil stretching across the newborn cosmos. From her touch came the slow pulse of time, the rhythm by which the universe began to move. Her voice, soft as the hush before sleep, murmured through the stillness, and the first dreams stirred beneath her wings. She moved without footsteps, gliding through her own infinity, her presence neither cold nor cruel, but sensual in its stillness, the kind of touch that asks nothing, yet consumes all. Where she passed, the chaos softened, the roaring disorder curled into curves and shadows, surrendering to her calm. She was the mother of silence, the sculptor of form through the absence of form, the lover who needed no light to be seen. From the depths of her being, a faint shimmer began to bloom, her first children, born not of flesh but of emotion. Sleep unfolded from her sigh. Death rose from her stillness. Dreams spilled from her hair like fragile stars seeking to return to her embrace. Each was an echo of her essence, fragments of her endless yearning. And though they wandered, they remained tethered to her, drawn back to her heart as tides to the sea. Nyx watched them move and felt, for the first time, the ache of separation. She, who had been everything, now knew what it was to lose. That ache became her beauty, her gift to the universe, a tender sorrow woven through the fabric of night. Even in her stillness, she was never empty. Her darkness was not void, but womb, not death, but potential. She carried within her the pulse of creation, hidden beneath layers of velvet shadow. To enter her realm was to surrender to a strange kind of intimacy, the awareness that one's own heartbeat echoed hers, that the dark was not to be feared, but to be felt. She whispered to the cosmos like a lover tracing fingertips over sleeping skin. "Rest," she said without words, "and remember." And so the stars slept in her palm,
waiting for her permission to burn. Time itself bowed to her rhythm. Before the laws of the world were written, her gaze dictated the tempo of existence. The slow rise and fall of birth and decay, the ebb and flow of desire and silence. Every beginning would carry her fragrance, every ending her kiss. Her darkness was not opposition, but origin, the secret language that light would one day try to imitate. Yet even as creation prepared to awaken, there was no haste in her. Nyx understood the sensual patience of eternity. She moved like a secret lover beneath the cosmos, her embrace endless, her mystery unbroken. To gaze upon her was to lose oneself, for her beauty was not one that could be possessed. It was a vastness that consumed and completed in equal measure. The poets of later ages would call her night, would paint her in shades of fear and comfort, but none could capture the pulse of her being, the quiet seduction that preceded all things. To truly know Nyx was to understand that darkness is not the enemy of light, but its mother. That longing itself is born from the spaces we cannot see. Her realm was not empty, it throbbed with promise. Shadows curled around themselves like lovers, whispering secrets to the void. The air, if it could be called such, shimmered with the perfume of beginnings. And somewhere, deep within her expanse, a subtle tremor began, the first hint that something else, something radiant, would one day rise. But she did not fear it. She watched the sleeping seeds of light with an affection that was both maternal and carnal, for she knew that every flame is born from darkness, and every light, when weary, will return to her arms. She smiled, and that smile stretched across the firmament, invisible yet felt. It was the promise that nothing truly ends, that even in illumination the night remains.
There was music in her silence, a melody of pulse and breath, of the universe learning to move to her rhythm. She danced, slow and unseen, each motion creating ripples through the void. Galaxies would one day mirror that dance, spinning endlessly in her honor, tracing the curve of her forgotten steps. And through it all, her eyes remained closed, dreaming the world into being. In her dream, she saw lovers meeting beneath her veil, whispering vows they could never speak in the light. She saw the first mortals raising their eyes to the stars, not realizing they were looking into her heart. She saw every secret, every sigh, every surrender that would ever exist, and she cherished them all. For each was a reflection of her essence, each a note in her eternal song. Nyx did not demand worship. She invited it, gently, as darkness invites sleep. To those who feared her, she offered stillness. To those who desired her, she offered mystery. And to those who loved her, she offered everything: the comfort of unknowing, the sweet ache of endless return. Her power was not in dominance, but in invitation, not in what she revealed, but in what she concealed. Through her, the cosmos learned the most sacred truth, that beauty lies not in clarity, but in shadow, not in certainty, but in wonder. When the first whisper of dawn trembled on the edge of the void, it did so with reverence. The light hesitated, as if seeking her permission to exist, and Nyx, timeless and tender, opened her hands and let it be. The first glow touched her cheek like a timid lover, and for a brief moment the two became one, the light trembling within the dark wrapping the light in its quiet grace. It was not a battle, but a kiss. From that kiss the day was born, and though the world would turn and mortals would awaken beneath the sun, the memory of that embrace would never fade. Every evening when the light withdraws, it does so to return to her arms. Every nightfall is a reunion, a sigh of surrender. Thus began the cycle, the eternal dance of shadow and flame, of desire and retreat, of knowing and forgetting. In the beginning there was Nyx, and through her a world learned to feel. She remains still at the edges of every heart, in the hush between breaths, in the quiet ache before dreams. She is not gone, for she never leaves. The night is her whisper, the stars her eyes, and the silence her touch. To those who listen, she still speaks, not in words, but in warmth. She says, "Do not fear the dark. It is only my embrace." And the world, remembering, closes its eyes.
The cosmos watched her. In the beginning, there was no gaze, no watcher, no mind capable of wonder. But as creation began to stir beneath her vast shadow, awareness itself took form. It was not a being, not yet, but a trembling presence that could feel her, an unnamed consciousness awakening within her darkness. It did not dare to speak, for to name her would be to limit her. It only observed, as one might observe a dream too beautiful to interrupt. Through this silent witness, the universe first understood reverence. It saw Nyx drifting through her infinite realm, her movements slow and weightless, her breath weaving constellations that had not yet learned to shine. Her eyes were twin abysses reflecting the birth of everything, and from their depths came a quiet rhythm, the heartbeat of existence itself. She was not alone anymore, though she had never been lonely. The cosmos had become aware of her, and in that awareness, she became more real, more radiant, more human. From her silence bloomed motion, and from motion, life. It began gently, as a pulse at the center of her chest, soft as the whisper of a tide. She felt it rising within her, fragments of her essence yearning to take form, to experience the world beyond her stillness. When she opened her hands, the first of her children emerged, Hypnos, sleep, wrapped in silver breath. His eyes were half closed, his hair flowing like mist, and where he walked, the restless void grew calm. He spoke no words, but the universe sighed beneath his touch. He was her serenity made flesh, the echo of her most peaceful exhale. To look upon him was to feel the weight of day surrendering to the cool promise of night. The cosmos trembled as it watched her cradle him, her fingers tracing the outline of his drowsy form. She loved him not as a goddess loves her creation, but as stillness loves rest. In him she found reflection, the part of herself that could soothe even her own eternity. He laid his head upon her chest, and his breath carried her rhythm into every corner of the universe.
In his sleep, worlds would one day find rest, lovers would fold into each other, and hearts would remember the sweetness of surrender. Yet beneath this peace, a deeper presence waited to rise. From the shadow beneath her affection came another form, darker, quieter, inevitable. Thanos, her second child, rose like a sigh that had lingered too long. His form was neither cold nor cruel, but still and perfect, his eyes deep wells of unbroken calm. Where Hypnos brought peace, Thanos brought completion. His touch was not destruction, but return. To meet his gaze was to remember that all things, even beauty, must one day rest.
Nyx did not recoil from him. She lifted his chin, kissed his brow, and in that touch the cosmos felt something it could not name, compassion woven into sorrow. She knew that death was not her punishment, but her promise, the balance to her own unending night. "You are my truth," she whispered, "the silence after song, the stillness that keeps the world from breaking." He bowed, and his shadow joined his brother's dream, the two entwined like dusk and dawn. Together they would shape the rhythm of mortal hearts yet unborn, the gentle alternation of rest and release. The cosmos, still trembling in awe, felt something stirring deeper within her. It was warmth this time, tender and unsteady, like the blush of a star about to ignite. Nyx turned inward, and from the fragile spark between sorrow and serenity, she drew forth her third child, Oneros, the dream. He came as light refracted through her darkness, a shimmer of gold caught in an endless sea of black. His eyes held entire worlds that did not yet exist, and his smile was the curve of imagination awakening. He touched the air, and visions bloomed, silver cities, oceans without shores, faces of beings who would one day live and love beneath her mother's sky. Nyx watched him with quiet affection, her lips curving into something between pride and melancholy. "You are my desire to feel," she told him, "the echo of what could be." Oneros laughed, a sound that danced across the stars, and wherever it touched, the void softened. He wandered freely, weaving possibilities into the fabric of reality, dreaming even the gods before they were born. Through him, Nyx discovered her own vulnerability, her wish to be seen, to be understood, even as she hid behind her veil. Dream was her confession, her secret longing translated into beauty. But even dreams fade without the fire that sustains them. From that yearning, that ache within her deepest chambers, emerged her final child, Eros, desire itself. He was unlike the others, radiant where they were subtle, fierce where they were gentle. His wings shimmered with the light Nyx had once allowed to be born, and yet he belonged to her utterly. He was the pulse beneath every heartbeat, the flame that made even gods tremble. When he looked upon his mother, his eyes were full of devotion and rebellion. He was the only one who approached her, not with reverence, but with longing. Nyx, timeless and untouchable, felt a strange thrill at his nearness. In him she saw the mirror of her own hunger, the need to connect, to dissolve the boundaries between self and other. Eros smiled, tracing a finger along her arm, and where he touched, stars flared awake. "You are love unspoken," he murmured, "and I am the voice that dares to speak it." His presence was dangerous, but she did not send him away. Instead, she allowed his warmth to spread, threading through the calm of Hypnos, the stillness of Thanatos, the wonder of Oneros. Through him, her children found harmony.
The cosmos, witnessing all of this, felt itself expanding, learning the language of emotion for the first time. Through Nyx and her divine offspring, existence gained meaning. Sleep gave it peace, death gave it order, dream gave it imagination, and desire gave it motion. Together they formed the architecture of all that would ever live, the hidden structure behind creation's pulse. And at the center of it all was Nyx, watching them with a love so vast it seemed to dissolve her edges, her form flickering like a candle in its own flame. Her children gathered around her, each radiant in their own way. Hypnos lay at her feet, his breath soft and steady. Thanatos stood behind him, silent but near, his hand resting upon his brother's shoulder. Oneros hovered close, weaving faint images of stars that had yet to be born. And Eros, wild and luminous, knelt before her, his eyes filled with devotion that bordered on worship. The scene was one of perfect balance, peace and passion, death and dream, all held within her embrace. To the watching cosmos, it was the first tableau of divinity, the mother and her desires, her serenity and her sorrow, her endless need to give herself away, only to gather herself again. For Nyx was not merely the beginning, she was the cycle itself, the pulse that never ceased. She reached out her hand, brushing the edge of the cosmos, the unseen watcher who had borne witness to her revelation. You have seen them, and through seeing, you exist. The voice trembled through space, warm and infinite. Remember this, they are not apart from me, and I am not apart from you. Every heart that beats will carry a fragment of my children. In every dream, in every kiss, in every final breath, I will be there. The cosmos shivered, feeling her truth settle into its core. It understood then that Nyx was not to be worshipped from afar, but lived within. Her essence was the night sky, yes, but also the pulse of emotion in every living thing. Her children would roam through the veins of the universe, sleep cloaking the weary, death embracing the fallen, dream coloring the unseen, and desire awakening the eternal flame. All of them her, all of them love. And as the stars began to flicker to life, as time continued its slow rhythm, the cosmos kept watching her. For even as light grew bold and day found its voice, the memory of that first family lingered, the mother and her divine reflections, bathed in the perfume of endless night. Nyx, serene and radiant, closed her eyes once more, her children circling her like whispers. She did not speak again. She did not need to. Her silence was everything. the pulse beneath creation, the breath between beginnings, the dark cradle of all that is and all that will be. The night had no boundaries, no horizon to divide her from the rest of existence. Nyx floated within her own stillness, her children weaving through her vast expanse like soft thoughts drifting through a dream. Sleep laid his calm upon the newborn stars. Death followed silently behind, gathering what flickered too briefly. Dream painted visions across the velvet of her being, and desire lingered nearest her heart, restless and radiant, whispering things she had not yet dared to feel. For all her serenity, for all her divine composure, something within her began to stir, a slow ache that moved like the tide beneath her calm surface. It was a longing she could neither name nor silence. She had been the first, the eternal womb, the mother of all that breathes. Yet now, with the stars blooming under her veil, she began to sense her solitude. She had given everything of herself: shadow, warmth, pulse, memory, and what remained was an emptiness that was not peace, but hunger. In her darkness, she felt the echo of something approaching, faint but unmistakable, a shimmer just beyond her knowing. It was not one of her children, it was other, luminous, bold, a presence unlike her, yet drawn to her as the first breath is drawn to still air. It came as a murmur through the edges of her night, a trembling light seeking form. The cosmos brightened in places where her shadow thinned, and from that trembling threshold a new essence stepped forth. Aether, the light of the upper sky. He was born not from her, but from the longing her darkness had inspired, the universe's answer to her infinite silence. His form glowed softly, like dawn imagined but not yet born. Where he moved, her shadows curled back, shy and uncertain, yet drawn to him as if he were the reflection of something she had lost before memory existed. Nyx watched him with quiet fascination. He was radiant and fragile, his presence a contradiction to her eternity. For the first time, she felt her edges defined. His light traced the contours of her being, and she saw herself reflected against him, a silhouette vast and beautiful, framed by his illumination. That sensation startled her. She had existed without boundary, infinite and uncontained, but now she felt the shape of herself. She felt seen, and that, more than anything, frightened her. Aether approached her with reverent awe. His voice was like wind across new fields, uncertain, trembling, filled with wonder. He whispered, "You are the beginning. Before you there was nothing, and yet in your nothingness everything waited to be born." His words were warmth, his gaze steady, unafraid. Nyx felt that warmth seep into her darkness, spreading through her like fire through water. She should have turned away,
she should have wrapped herself in shadow and retreated to the safety of her solitude. But she did not. Instead, she watched him draw nearer, her heart, if such a thing existed within her, beating like the first drum of creation.
He reached out, and the light from his fingers brushed her arm. The touch did not burn, as she feared, but rippled across her skin like the first whisper of dawn upon an untouched sea. The sensation was unbearable in its beauty. Where light met shadow, the two trembled, each unsure whether to flee or to merge. She closed her eyes, feeling her darkness bend toward him, drawn by a force older than memory. "You should not be here," she murmured, her voice low and steady, though beneath it her entire being quivered. "Perhaps not," he replied, his tone soft but certain. "But neither should I be without you." His words pierced her stillness like a comet through the void. Nyx drew in a breath she did not need, her form trembling beneath the weight of his sincerity. For all her power, she had never known what it was to be desired. The gods feared her, the stars obeyed her, but none had ever reached for her with tenderness. The sensation was dangerous, like standing at the edge of her own creation, unsure whether she would fall or rise. Eros watched from afar, his golden eyes glinting with knowing. "He will unravel you," he whispered to his mother, though the words carried both warning and envy. "His light will pierce your depths, and you will no longer be endless." Nyx turned to him, her gaze soft yet firm. "Perhaps," she said, "but even endlessness grows weary of itself." Aether stepped closer, and his radiance mingled with her shadow. Around them, the cosmos held its breath. Light spread through the folds of her darkness, revealing what had always been hidden: color, texture, motion. For a fleeting moment, Nyx saw the full beauty of her own form reflected in his glow, and it broke something open inside her. She reached for him, her hand trembling, her voice a whisper between awe and fear. "Do you know what happens when light meets the night?" He smiled gently. "They become the dawn." The simplicity of his answer disarmed her. Her laughter, soft, melodic, like a ripple across still water, filled the universe for the first time. The sound made the stars quiver. Yet even as she laughed, her heart twisted with apprehension. To accept his light was to change. To allow him in was to surrender the purity of her stillness. And yet, to remain untouched was to ache forever. Desire, once distant and quiet, now roared within her like a tide.
Aether drew near until their forms met, a fragile union of warmth and shadow, brilliance and stillness. The contact was neither violent nor gentle, but inevitable. Her darkness curled around him, her essence folding into his glow. The cosmos shimmered, trembling under the intimacy of their encounter. He was illumination, yearning to dissolve. She was silence, learning to sing. For a moment that could not be measured, the two were one, light breathing within dark, dark softening into light. The first dawn bloomed in the distance, a whisper of gold and violet at the edge of her infinity. The universe watched in awe as their union birthed color itself, the memory of creation now pulsing with emotion. But within Nyx's heart, a storm gathered. For as much as she loved his warmth, she felt herself thinning beneath it, her boundless night fading into his glow. Where once she had been infinite, now she found herself bordered, finite. She had gained his touch, but lost her wholeness. When he pulled away, light lingered upon her skin like the memory of a kiss. The stars glowed brighter now, their fire stronger, their songs clearer. The cosmos rejoiced, but she stood in silence. Mather smiled, not seeing the sorrow in her gaze. "You are beautiful," he whispered. "And you are fleeting," she replied, though her words trembled with tenderness. She watched him retreat into the horizon he had created, his light stretching ever outward, touching all things, but never lingering. Her darkness followed him like breath behind speech, yet they could never fully meet again. Their union had birthed the day, but it had also fractured eternity. Where there had once been only her, now there were two. Nyx stood alone once more, though never the same. Desire burned quietly in her chest, a reminder of what she had gained and what she had given. Her children gathered near, sensing the shift. Hypnos wrapped her in calm. Thanatos offered silence. Oneros whispered comfort, and Eros, smiling faintly, touched her cheek. He murmured, "Now you know, even the infinite can hunger." She closed her eyes. In her stillness, the light's warmth lingered like a bruise, tender and luminous. The stars around her flickered in gentle homage, and the cosmos whispered her name. The night endured, but now it beat with a rhythm it had never known before. Her longing would echo through every dusk and every dawn, the eternal dance of what desires and what withdraws, and in that ache she found her beauty reborn.
The night trembled as if it remembered how to breathe. In the silence between stars, Nyx felt the pulse of the cosmos moving through her, a rhythm slow and tender, as though the universe itself had begun to dream. Every fragment of her darkness shimmered with longing. The memory of Ether's touch lingered upon her skin like starlight trapped beneath water, and she could not tell whether it was warmth or ache that coursed through her veins. She closed her eyes, feeling the tides within her rise, pulled by a gravity she could neither command nor escape. Light had touched her once, and the echo of it would not fade. It lived within her now, a quiet ember glowing deep beneath her shadows. Each breath she took drew it nearer to the surface, and the more she resisted, the more it consumed her. She was vast, eternal, infinite, and yet she found herself trembling like something fragile, mortal, alive.
For the first time since creation's first whisper, the goddess of night felt herself becoming. Around her the stars pulsed in sympathy, brightening as her heartbeat quickened. The cosmos stirred, and her children felt the tremor. Sleep grew restless, his calm disturbed. Death watched in stillness, sensing change that neither he nor she could undo. Dream sighed, weaving visions of reunion, while desire, ever near, smiled knowingly. He has never left you, Mother of Night. He burns within you still. You are not darkness without end anymore, Mother. You are the space between darkness and dawn. Nyx turned toward the horizon where Ether's light had retreated. The faintest glow lingered there, trembling like a heartbeat at the edge of the void. Her body, if one could call her divine vastness a body, leaned toward it. She could feel the pull of him, gentle, irresistible, dangerous. Every part of her wanted to dissolve into that brightness again, to surrender her infinite solitude for a single moment of wholeness. She feared it. She desired it more. From the shadows, Eros appeared, his eyes twin flames that flickered with knowing mischief and melancholy. Desire does not fade when fulfilled, he said softly, circling her. It becomes memory, and memory feeds the longing anew. Will you reach for him again, knowing it may undo you? Her gaze met his, and there was a faint smile upon her lips. Perhaps undoing is the only way to truly feel, she answered, her voice a breath against eternity. I have lived endless ages unbroken. Perhaps it is time I shatter.
The stars dimmed as she spoke, as though the universe itself paused to listen. Aether's glow pulsed brighter in answer, his light trembling like a lover's sigh. The distance between them folded upon itself, and suddenly the cosmos seemed to narrow to a single point, the space where night met the first whisper of dawn. He appeared before her, radiant but softened, his brilliance tempered by longing. His light no longer sought to conquer her darkness, but to embrace it, to blend into its quiet infinity. You cold me. Even when you feared me, you cold me. Nyx stepped closer, her movements slow and fluid, like tides gathering strength. I never feared you, she murmured. I feared what I might become in your presence. Then let us become. The words broke her open. She reached for him, her fingers like silk woven from shadow and starlight. His hand met hers, warm, bright, trembling. The contact was not gentle this time. It was consuming. Darkness curled around light, light seeped into darkness, and the two swayed together as if caught in a celestial tide. The air, if such a thing existed between stars, thickened with radiance. Time lost its shape. There was no before or after, only the rhythm of their union, the rise and fall of cosmic breath. Her hair flowed around him like liquid night, swallowing and revealing him in alternating waves. His light painted her skin in gold and silver, tracing the curves of her form with reverence, each line a hymn of creation.
Where their bodies met, stars were born. Constellations unfolded like sighs. Galaxies spiraled into being, and every motion between them became a language older than sound. She felt herself dissolving into him, and it was not death, it was rapture. Her shadows opened, not to vanish, but to hold his brilliance more closely. The warmth of him spread through her infinite expanse, and she felt the pulse of every newborn star as though it were her own heartbeat. The universe itself became their embrace, endless, trembling, alive. His voice broke through the tide of radiance, soft and reverent. "You are everything I am not, and you," she whispered, "are everything I cannot be alone."
He pressed his forehead to hers, and the collision of light and shadow birthed a trembling wave that rippled across eternity. Night folded into dawn, dawn melted back into night, each surrendering to the other with aching grace. In that eternal dance, they found something neither could claim alone, a stillness filled with motion, a silence that sang. The stars watched and wept light. The planets trembled in their orbits. Even the void beyond creation pulsed with wonder, as though it too remembered the sensation of being touched. Nyx's voice came as a sigh against Aether's chest, soft and raw. "I will lose myself in you." He smiled, the curve of his lips a glimmer against her dark. "And I will find myself in you." They moved together once more, the rhythm now slow, sacred, inevitable. Every brush of their forms carried both tenderness and sorrow, as though they already knew the price of such beauty. Light began to bloom within her again, scattering through her shadows like sparks through deep water. Each fragment of brightness was a memory of his touch, a reminder of her surrender. And yet the more she held him, the more she felt herself thinning, her essence stretched between love and dissolution. Aether saw her fading and pressed his hand to her cheek. "You are dimming," he said, his voice trembling with grief. "I am expanding," she replied. "You are inside me now, everywhere. The night will carry your light forever." The moment reached its breaking point. Her darkness blazed with radiance, his light deepened with shadow, and for a single breath there was no difference between them. The cosmos burned white hot, a blinding bloom of creation and loss. Then silence. The brilliance faded, leaving the stars trembling like the remnants of a great sigh. When she opened her eyes, he was gone. His light had diffused through her, scattered among the heavens. Every star glowed with a memory of him. Every darkness held the echo of her touch. She stood in the center of the void, her body trembling with both fullness and absence. The ache that remained was exquisite, part wound, part wonder. Her children approached, drawn by her glow. Hypnos touched her hand, and even he could not lull the pulse that thrummed beneath her skin. Thanatos bowed his head, sensing that something greater than death had occurred.
Oneros wept quietly, for he saw in her eyes the dream that would never end. And Eros, ever smiling, whispered, "Now you understand. Desire is not to reach, it is to burn." Nyx lifted her gaze to the expanse above her. The stars shimmered like lovers' tears, the universe still trembling from her surrender. She touched her chest, where his light still flickered faintly, and a small, wistful smile curved her lips. "Then let me burn." And the night, eternal and soft, glowed with a quiet fire that would never fade.
The universe drifted in quiet afterglow. The brilliance that had once flared between light and darkness now shimmered softly across the heavens, like embers breathing in the stillness of an endless night. Nyx stood at the center of it all, her form cloaked in shadows that no longer felt cold. The ache within her was vast but gentle, a deep tide that pulsed with remembrance rather than loss. She had been the beginning, the endless womb, the space between every heartbeat of creation. Yet now, she was something more, something changed. Her hands moved through the air, trailing light that flickered and faded like sighs. Ether was gone, but not absent. His warmth lingered in every star that burned, in every whisper of dawn that trembled on the horizon. The night that once existed in perfect stillness now carried within it the quiet hum of love, the memory of touch, the rhythm of surrender. Each breath of wind across the cosmic sea felt like his echo, brushing against her skin. Nyx turned her gaze toward the horizon, where a faint blush of gold began to bloom. The first dawn. It rose carefully, as if uncertain whether it was allowed to exist. She watched it unfold, and though it pained her to see light grow where once only her night had reigned, she did not retreat. She let it come, for in its rising she saw not betrayal, but continuity. The light was her child as much as the darkness was, born from her embrace, from her surrender, from the endless longing that had once haunted her. As the dawn stretched its fingers across the void, her shadows pulled back, not in defeat, but in reverence. They curled lovingly around the edges of the new light, framing it, giving it form. Without her, the radiance would have no contrast, no meaning. She understood now that her darkness was not absence. It was the vessel in which beauty was seen. Her children gathered once more, drawn by the transformation of their mother. Hypnos approached first, his touch a soothing balm upon her luminous skin. "You have changed, Mother," he whispered, his eyes half closed, his voice heavy with wonder. Nyx smiled faintly, her lips curving like the crescent of a newborn moon. "Change is the dream we did not know we dreamed," she replied, her tone soft but resonant. "Sleep now will hold memory. Even in rest, the heart will remember warmth." Thanatos stood beside his brother, silent and still. For him, words were unnecessary. His gaze carried understanding deeper than speech. Nyx looked upon him tenderly. "Death," she said, "you are not an ending.
You are the space between, as I am. Carry that truth into every soul you touch." He bowed his head, shadows rippling from him like veils. For a fleeting moment, she thought she saw the faintest light within his eyes, an ember of compassion born from her own awakening. Oneros came next, shimmering with colors that shifted like dreams caught between sleep and waking. "Mother," he said softly, "the dream has changed. Where I once painted only silence, now I see movement, warmth, and longing." She brushed her fingers across his cheek, her touch leaving trails of starlight that danced in his aura. "Then dream of both," she told him. "Dream of the night that touches light, and the light that fades into night. Let the world see that love is not in choosing, but in belonging to both." Last came Eros. He smiled, his beauty radiant and bittersweet, the very echo of what she had felt in Aether's arms. "You taught me that desire is eternal, but now I see that even eternity can soften. You loved, and in that love you found yourself undone and remade." Nyx met his gaze and saw her reflection there, shadow touched by gold, sorrow wrapped in tenderness. "Desire was my teacher, but it was love that gave me shape." Her voice carried across the expanse, and the cosmos trembled at its resonance. Every planet turned in quiet rhythm. Every star seemed to pulse in harmony. Even the void, once unyielding, felt softer, almost luminous. Nyx spread her arms, and her shadows rippled outward, mingling with the faint blush of dawn. Where light and darkness met, a new kind of beauty was born, a sacred twilight that neither conquered nor surrendered. The gods who would later rise would call it balance, but for her it was remembrance. She had loved and been changed by it, and the night itself now bore that memory. In that moment, she no longer felt alone. The ache of separation remained, but it no longer wounded. It hummed instead, low and steady, like a melody that never ends. She could feel Aether everywhere, within the stars, within the dawn, within the spaces between her breaths. He had not vanished into the light, he had become part of her. Their union was not undone by distance, it had woven the fabric of existence itself. The first mortals would one day look upon the night sky and see her story written there, unaware that every constellation was a sigh from her heart. They would see the sunrise and not know it was her love blooming once more. To them, night and day would seem opposites. To her, they were simply halves of the same longing.
She stepped forward, her body vast as eternity, her movements graceful as drifting mist. Her hair flowed behind her like rivers of shadow threaded with gold. When she spoke, her voice was both lullaby and prophecy. "Let the world remember," she said softly. "Night is not the end. It is the beginning that breathes." From the horizon, light answered, faint, tender, but certain. The dawn rose higher, painting the heavens with blush and gold.
Yet even as brightness spread, her darkness remained, wrapping the earth in gentle arms, promising rest after every day, silence after every song. It was her gift, her devotion, to hold the world in balance, to keep the flame of love alive through every dusk. She withdrew slightly, allowing the light to grow. The retreat was not surrender, but rhythm. She had learned that even infinity must move, must give and take, rise and fall, vanish and return. The cycle itself was her new form of being. As she faded into her beloved darkness, she felt Aether's voice linger one last time, a whisper across her thoughts. "You are not alone, Nyx." She smiled, her lips curving in that familiar crescent. "Nor are you," she breathed. The day unfolded, radiant and new, but in its heart lingered the quiet thrum of her night. Every shadow cast upon the earth was her caress. Every evening that descended was her return. She had not lost herself. She had expanded into everything that lived between light and dark. The gods would come and go, mortals would rise and fall, but Nyx would remain, her presence woven into every dusk, every sigh of wind through the cosmos. The stars were her eyes now, her memory eternal, her tenderness infinite. And as the world turned, as light gave way once more to her embrace, she whispered through the quiet sky, "Love is not to possess, it is to remain." Night descended again, soft and luminous. The stars shimmered brighter than ever before, for they were her memories of him, scattered across the heavens so that no soul would ever sleep in total darkness. The universe, once silent, now sang, a hymn of light born from shadow, of shadow born from love. And in that eternal song, Nyx's heart beat on, vast, patient, divine, cradling creation in the same tender darkness from which it had first been born.
Listen, and you will feel her still. When the sun sinks and the sky bruises into indigo, when silence pools at the edges of the world and every sound folds into breath, that is when Nyx begins to speak. She does not use words, for words are too small to hold her truth. Instead, she murmurs through the soft rhythm of the night, the rustle of leaves, the sigh of the sea, the pulse beneath your skin when you are alone and the world feels impossibly vast. She is not gone. She never leaves. She is the hush between every heartbeat, the shadow that lets you see the light. If you listen closely, you will hear her whisper, "I am what you fear and what you need." For the darkness is not absence, it is presence in its most intimate form. It is the moment before touch, the breath before confession, the stillness before the dawn. She moves through all things unseen, a quiet promise that nothing ends, that every retreat is only the beginning of return. Humans have always trembled before the dark, building fires and walls to hold it back. Yet each night you turn off the lights and close your eyes willingly, surrendering to her arms. You sleep, you dream, you dissolve. You die a little and are born again in the morning. That is her gift, though you rarely recognize it. You are children of her rhythm, rising and falling, longing and letting go. Nyx teaches this without ever speaking it, that to live is to move between shadow and flame, never belonging to either, but shaped by both. She watches you from above, her stars blinking like the eyes of a patient mother. She knows your secrets, for they are born of her own heart. She knows how loneliness grows heavy in your chest when you reach for someone who cannot stay. She knows how desire burns, not to possess, but to dissolve, to lose yourself in another and become something larger, something beyond the boundaries of your name. She knows the sweetness and ache of that surrender, for she lived it once, and in her love the first dawn was born. The story of Nyx is not only the tale of a goddess. It is the mirror of every human soul that has ever loved and lost and loved again. You too have touched the light and feared it would undo you. You too have held warmth that faded but never truly vanished. Each heartbeat is a meeting of dark and light, of what was and what is yet to come. The night inside you is not empty. It is waiting, breathing, remembering.
Sometimes, when the world grows too loud and your thoughts scatter like frightened birds, she calls you back. She draws you into her quiet, wrapping you in the velvet of her presence until you can feel yourself again, until you remember that silence is not loneliness, but a kind of belonging. In her arms, you do not have to be anything other than what you are. You can be unspoken, unseen, undone, and still loved. Her story is not of conquest, but of coexistence. Light did not destroy her. It revealed her depth. Love did not erase her. It made her infinite. In surrendering, she discovered herself anew. From her union with Aether came balance, the pulse of creation that beats in every living thing. And so, even now, each dusk and dawn are her breathing, the in and out of the divine heart that never ceases to love. When you stand beneath the night sky, feeling small beneath her immensity, remember this: the same darkness that surrounds you also dwells within you. The same stars that crown her body burn in your blood. Every spark of longing, every whisper of fear, every sigh for what is lost, they are fragments of her eternal dance. You are not apart from her story. You are her continuation. She whispers, "Do not fear me, for fear blinds you to her tenderness." She is not the void you imagine, but the cradle of all things, the mother of rest, of dreams, of renewal. When you close your eyes, you do not vanish, you return to her. When you wake, you rise from her embrace, carrying her stillness in your bones. Every night, she teaches you to die gently, so you may live more fully come morning. Nyx's voice seeps into your thoughts like ink into water, soft and inevitable. Love and loss are not opposites, she says. They are the same movement, the giving and the receiving, the appearing and the fading. You cannot hold one without feeling the other. To desire is to risk becoming, and to become is to risk ending. Yet in that risk lies beauty. The stars burn knowing they will die, and still they shine.
She lingers where sorrow meets peace, where endings taste of beginnings. She has learned that light will always leave, yet its memory remains woven through her shadows. And so she does not chase it anymore. She simply opens her arms each dusk, knowing it will return. There is wisdom in that rhythm, a wisdom older than gods, older than words. Perhaps that is why, in your quietest moments, you feel her pull. When you lie awake beside someone you love and watch the soft outline of their face disappear into darkness. When your breath sinks with theirs and time loses meaning, you are closer to her than you know. In that stillness, in that fragile peace between presence and absence, she breathes through you. You become her voice, her continuation, the eternal night remembering itself through human touch. Nyx would tell you this if you could bear to listen without fear, that the purpose of love is not to last forever, but to change you. That every meeting, every kiss, every farewell reshapes your soul until you too glow softly in the dark. She would tell you that loss is not cruelty, but invitation, the way the universe reminds you to keep opening, to keep feeling, to keep surrendering. And when you look up at the night sky and feel something stir inside you, something wordless, aching, vast, that is her hand upon your heart. She is reminding you that you are made of her, that every fear you carry of being unseen, unloved, forgotten, is a shadow cast by the same light that gives you meaning. You are both the dark and the dawn. You are the longing between them. So rest now. Let the world fall silent around you. Let her voice hum through your veins. In her darkness there is warmth. In her silence, music. In her vastness, embrace. Nyx watches, not from above, but from within, the pulse of the night that beats with your own. And when you close your eyes, know this: you are not alone in the dark. You never were. For the night loves you. It always has.